Oh, so this was one of our later rehearsals that we've done. This is almost like a full run through. We've added in the idea of costumes, more props, and I'll be talking about like the use of them and why we changed them and what was effective about it as we go through. So we start with the ding. We also experimented with lighting. Lighting wasn't a major thing that we focused on because we had this Starbuck doing that for us, and it was about like increasing and decreasing light at certain points. We obviously had a light on Maisie, the character, to show how she is relevant to the piece and if she's a character involved, and then lights on the main part. Also, because we didn't want to hide anything, like the side characters, because in Brecht and Churchill's style, they don't hide things, they don't conceal things. Everything is out to show for the audience. We didn't want it to be like you weren't supposed to see these people. We had the interaction between the bystanders and the characters. Sort of looking at this, I think we could have done this in the fact that they didn't really acknowledge them, they just took them as if they came from nowhere. The objects, but it was sort of like this link to like the controlling feel. We definitely went with more of like a controlling feel, as if the play itself is being controlled. There was more of a emphasis put on setting up the stage. I think this sort of shows an effect of like constructing the play that's going to be reset again and again. It's constructing the idea that this is all like fake and away from reality. And the fact that this is going to be an abstract play is in ideas of like Carol Churchill's intention. So we've got here the use of props. So we've got different cups, a water jug, we've got knives and forks, we've got a scarf used for characterization of Anna, and then we've got Alice, and then we've got Brian, who's got the jacket and mannerisms. We've got Maisie, who has a book and glasses, and different things sort of pile up. So the cutlery pile up, the cups pile up, the books pile up, and the glasses are used. It's very much like, in terms of after we've had our discussion, we've had a discussion about character mannerisms. So we've talked about how we wanted to distinguish them, all of them, make them a bit more interesting. We talked about their relationships and things that we needed to do to physically show this, and accents as well, in like terms of showing contrast between characters. The controlling unit, we decided to actually make more of a thing of pressing the button, not that it's discreet, that it's out there in the open as well, because Brecht didn't want to hide anything like I said before, but as well showing how there's this controlling element physically on display. The acknowledgement of the bell, and then the changing of lighting. I think when we look at this in contrast to the first ones we ever did, it's a lot clearer when the transition is start and finished. It's a lot smoother. The lighting provides focus points, and focuses on certain characters. This definitely reminds me of when we did our transitions in anatomy very systematically. And we don't reset right to the beginning because we felt like this was a little bit of a variation again.
It's taking its time.
The acknowledgement of bell, and then moving along, having the characters do the same thing. This transition here is a little bit rough, and we need to smooth that out a bit and make sure it's a lot clearer. But the other transitions work really well with the lighting and stuff, I think.
She's taking her time. Not really. You should have let her play. You should not.
What I really ain't here for is the fauna, because it's like a completely separate branch.
And because this scene is longer, it allows them to sort of utilise the costume / props they've got. So Marlon uses the book more, then it adds to the pile here whilst we're piling up jackets. So it's not just one thing that we're piling up, which was like seemed like drawing attention to something else. And allows us to use like the costume to sort of show off what our characters are like. So I play with the scarf, showing that Alice is like, obviously she like fiddles. I think she has like a form of OCD. We sort of felt like that's what lent her character quite well, and obviously set her apart from the others. Then Brian's character as well, like the interaction between them seems to work quite well.
ducks and there's this thing that's not a duck.
Like, the interaction between them shows off they're a couple a lot more at this point, and shows off that Brian is used to Maisie going off on a tangent.
It's to feed that little thing in the crop, but you have to feed it and there's this little creature with a ducky face. It makes you wonder, what was there?
Yeah, like the use of costume and stuff here.
This has always been a favourite animal of mine. And it just isn't like eggs, like a duck. It's a marsupial, like a kangaroo. So the baby's born like a thread, like a speck. Is that right? Is it octopus a marsupial? Or does it eggs like a duck?
I think there should be a bit more like relevant reaction to when Marlon's saying it, but like this was a definite improvement in showing the relationship and like what we're trying to show. Some nice moments here, the interaction between the two characters as well. Obviously that transition was a bit rough again. We definitely like, they do lend themselves to certain characteristics, like the glasses especially with Maisie's character.
Shouldn't have played. Should not. Should be exhausted. A woman of 35. You're so right. We're going to, don't worry. Alice! She'll just have a little cry.
The age gap is a lot more clear as well. They do show off to be quite a bit older. I feel like we got the characterization better because to start off with we were more focused on like trying to get the scenes right, trying to get the transitions right, setting apart. Forgot about like more the relationship between the characters, and obviously we'd look deeply into how to set them apart and how they would interact with each other depending on the variation of scenes, how that the controlling people would come into play, and how this would like be affected by the lighting and stuff. Like some changes are a bit rough.
She's taking your time.
She's not.
Shouldn't have played.
You shouldn't.
She'd be exhausted.
She's a woman of 35.
Even like the intonation and the way that the character's reacting provides like a more interesting piece to watch. Maybe there are some slight like hidden message underneath it. Like I think this is more what the writer would have intended if she would have written it for like this many people, even in her intentions of her actual play. The feedback we got was a lot better, and it shows more variations of slight like characteristics that each person like actor provides, and I think that it shows a major contrast, even like the most subtle changes we made.
She's a woman of 35.
So right, of course.
She didn't want to be met.
So delightful if you always be so right.
She'll be in.
Like this.
She didn't want to fuss.
I was talking about spontaneity. I mean, she says that, but it wouldn't be if she didn't know she was being met. And there I was, or there we just were.
And this that we kept from the beginning, but it was better timed to sort of provide that.
Hello? Yes. Right. Okay.
It's like this like almost frozen aspect, but it's not.
What?
It's been an accident.
The plane.
Didn't I say we should have met her?
Is she?
I feel like this scene now has a lot more impact on an audience to like things that could have played out than it did before. The use of like the water as well is like a subtle change. It just allows more characterization. I think that's why all these props are really useful as well, because even though it like adds more to like the scene to like visually look at for an audience, both Brecht and Churchill would have a use for everything that they would have on the stage. It's not like they would just have a random prop on stage, so everything had a use, and I think that by our use of it was like utilizing what we saw, utilizing what we saw by creating like the characteristics and using it as a way of building that characteristics. That's why we use the props. And what effect it did have, obviously, was that it showed off the character.
She's taking time.
Not really.
should have met the play.
You should know.
Like, even now it's clearer, obviously, because the actors wouldn't obviously be playing characters like that, but even now it's clearer to the like gender of the characters and to like the similarities between each variation when we have a reset.
35.
How can you speak of your daughter?
She's a woman of 35.
You're so right. Please that, but if she wouldn't be, if she didn't know she was being met, and there we were, or there I was if you insisted on not coming. She'd like it when it happened, but then she got aside. She'd be delighted.
Well, we didn't. So there's no point worrying about it now.
She'll never come home from Australia again.
What do you mean?
Some scenes are slower and some scenes are faster, and I feel like this is a good thing in like showing contrast in pace and stuff. It provides really like interesting dynamic, like in the flow of the whole play. I think this is a good middle point as well, because this is when Leah was like Alice at the beginning.
She's taking her time. Not really. We shouldn't have played. We should not.
Skip through.
And there we just were. Or there I was if you had come again. That she'll never come back for the first time again.
So introduction of Lewis. Here's like the use of props, the vodka bottle, and it immediately like shows off that he's an alcoholic, that he's not like just odd.
Where is she?
You are not coming in that condition.
Where's my big sister? I want you to give her a kiss.
You can see her.
Liked that interaction as well, because it showed how like almost like a metaphor for like the fact that Lewis really likes like alcohol and is dependent on it by kissing the vodka bottle, and also saying that he wants to give his sister a kiss to like greet her. I think this interaction, as well as I'll play in a minute, shows off like the mother, father and son relationship a lot
When
better.
you are so alive, Ryan. Susie isn't here right now, Lewis.
You probably got around the table. Daddy knows where Susie is. Daddy always knows where Susie is.
That was better intonation as well, because when we looked at it and evaluated it, we thought that Lewis perhaps was a bit jealous of the way that they treated Susie. He knew that he was a disappointment to his parents. He knew that his parents had sort of given up on him, and it was this idea that Lewis maybe perhaps was resentful for that. He knew what mistakes he was making, but he knew that he wouldn't get any support from his parents now because they just expect him to always be drunk. So it's this sort of like almost jealous of the fact that they always worry about Susie and Susie this and Susie that, and then it's not really much about Lewis himself, and that shows that off really nicely.
Lacey, why are you? You're a drink. Lacey, you can go down to the pub, you can get away from this load of...
Like, it's great in breaking the illusion of doing the resets, and I think at the beginning, obviously, like I've said before, it's about building up the understanding that this is what this play is going to be like, but now it works in a way of like controlling, it works in a way of pausing the action, allows the audience to take up enough of the scene to have an understanding of the characters and like what's going to happen in this certain variation. But because it's like at a certain point, it also allows the idea of like control, reset and abstract theatre and like political theatre, because they were both political playwrights. This was the double fast speed. The different types of jackets as well, I just want to mention, are actually stated in the script. So by doing this, I think they wanted to show like progression of time, they wanted to show the slight variation again. And I think that this was why they used loads of different jackets, and we obviously emulated this with what jackets we had in the props cupboard, probably like linking to certain time zones.
She'd be exhausted. She's not. How can you speak with your dog?
This is like much faster variation. I think it still has clarity. Last time it lost quite a bit of its clarity, and there still could be improvement on that, but it allowed like the understanding maybe more, like when you understand it more, there's more reasoning to why it's double speed to an audience.
Of course. She can travel on lunch, she can travel after night. It seems like we always always being so right.
She didn't want to be mad.
She was here in a few
I'm
minutes.
talking
About
She
spontaneity.
doesn't want fuss.
She says that, but it wouldn't be if she didn't know she was being met there. And there we were, or there I was, with you, it's not coming. She'd like it when it happened. The moment she thought that, she'd be delighted.
Glad you didn't try to put your mind back.
She'll never come home from Australia again.
Yeah, of course she'll come again.
In the event she goes back, of course she'll come again, but she'll never come back for the first time again.
So this waiting.
It's a better sort of pause, it's a better sort of reason for Maisie to interject than last time. I like the idea of the side that we added in, and it was sort of like a mutual decision to sort of like leave this bigger pause and change in pace, still making it relevant obviously that it's the same scene.
Well, I hope she just comes to terms with the time to think on break.
You don't have to wait till you.
No, it's a special lunch. Are you going to tell her straight away?
That's not something for you to worry about, is it?
We are all in this together.
We all have perfect alibis. They don't believe alibis anymore. It's all forensic, it's all genetic.
But there can't be any forensic. None of us did anything.
The use of lighting was hard here, it always came too far forward, so it would be better if we went like a bit further back to sort of show off like the interaction here at the front, and obviously not blocking off Maisie.
When it's nothing to do with any of us, except that the body was found in our garden. It was dumped in our garden, as everybody knows.
I feel like as well, maybe this could be a deeper meaning behind as well, like a message that we could partly convey, is that in the different relationships when certain things play out, the different variations, the certain things play out, the relationships change between the characters. In some variations, the Brian and Alice seem a lot more conflicted, and in others they seem like, you know, a bit closer, a bit more comfortable with each other. So it's sort of like, I don't know, maybe like the way they deal with situations has a strain on their relationships, maybe showing how relationships often surround like in the way that they deal with situations.
It's about postmen, but they haven't taken it in. I happen to know that a great many people are wrongfully convicted. I don't live in a dream world to suggest bad things only happen to people in newspapers.
So I'll just say nothing and leave it to you.
I feel like the bell should come in earlier to sort of cut people off and allow like not that weird pause of action, because then it feels like it's more controlled like Puppet Masters, whereas if we stop then it feels like it's less controlled, like it's more of the will of the characters, because I feel like there's this sort of separation between this actually happening and then them stopping it and each actor coming in and changing it, almost like improvised theatre.
I hope she does come here soon, because I'm getting hungry. You don't have to wait to eat.
No, it's her special lunch.
I should just go ahead and eat anyway, since you've got no sense of occasion. She's not going to care if there's lunch. She'll be exhausted. She'll go to bed.
That's alright, that's what she wants to do.
You make yourself a doormat to that girl. You always did. She won't be grateful for lunch. She'll be on a diet.
Now, the one guy that is a good guy is the head guy.
So I like this reaction again. It sort of brings back the interaction that we had earlier on. It's like what I said about relationships. This shows a different relationship of them like unanimous decision to be like fed up with Maisie, especially at a time where they're like in the middle of an argument. Yeah.
This is not to do with combining.
And the contrast between when I was playing Brian and when I was playing Alice, I felt was better because of like the costume, because of the character interaction and the mannerisms that we talked about previously.
That girl, you always did. She won't be pleased for lunch. She'll be on a diet. Are you pleased she's coming back? What is the matter with you now? Don't sleep. Don't.
This is a better, obviously, I feel like it's less of a like unknown mistake. We fixed that problem. Oh, we had the...
You don't seem pleased, you seem cross.
I felt that was that variation.
I'm sure.
Finger in your roses! Finger in your roses! A pocket full of roses! A tissue! We all fall down!
And that's a much better use of what it says in the script, and I think that was better in terms of what Carol Churchill would try to show in like the absurdity of it. This next variation shows like the build-up of anger. It's probably one of the longest variations, so showing like build-up of character.
It should be a lovely day. You spoil everything.
You've done it now. It was a lovely day. You spoiled it.
I'm unhappy. What are you gonna do about it?
You know you have to help yourself with this.
Oh, please never stop.
Lewis, I wish you died at birth. If I knew you'd grown up to be like this.
So the whole bit of this section was to show like how things were getting out of control, and the whole idea that I think Marlon had to sit differently if he was playing Alice, but like the whole idea that Alice was, you know, like lost, you know, really frustrated. Brian was just getting angry at everyone. Lewis comes in drunk. Maisie is too involved in all the action, and it shows how she's kind of like a batty old character. We sort of, when we did this variation and this like thought more deeply into it, we felt like Maisie was a bit out of it. She wasn't like, she was interested in certain like biological things, but she wasn't really like the same as Brian and Alice, and I think we'd set up for this previously anyway, so the sort of like idea that in this variation everything seemed to just go out of total control, like, and it's getting more absurd as it's going along.
I either killed myself or you when you're born.
You see, this is where I get it from. Is it any wonder?
And the whole idea that it goes back to like normality
She says that, but it would have been if she didn't know
and
she
just
was
this
doing
total scene reset. Yeah, I like how it looks now as well, with the piling up of books and coats. Sort of looks better than before.
that. And there we just were, or there I was, if you insisted not. She's like,
And this is the final reset. It sort of seems more normal, I think, for the whole of this scene. Has a similar sort of reaction when Brian gets angry.
what's with you now? You don't seem pleased. You seem cross.
And there's a twist at the end.
She'll be here in no time, I'm sure.
You're looking immensely cross, trying to stay with all your twins. This should be a lovely day. You ruin everything. It was a
This was something that we had rehearsed, but I didn't get any like rehearsal videos of it. When the gunmen come in and kill them, we had to substitute this for like strangling and stuff, because we felt like it would look better and like work better, like in terms of like making more sense. Obviously it's not supposed to make sense as like abstract, but in terms of like being easier to do, being more realistic in like the actual play of itself, having these people come in and kill these three characters, it's supposed to be comedic and exaggerated, but in a different way, like maybe like a deep metaphorical thing that ends the whole piece that we're doing.
Be nice to her! Yes! I'm just saying be nice to her.
And maybe not that funny. We needed to work on like a way of still making it funny, but that it had the similar effect of like the like making it funny, but also at the same time still having the effect of like the death and making it final to the point where the audience will think, right, like they can't possibly come back from this and reset, but we do, and resetting to the beginning. And then obviously finishing by repeating the final line. Some things we still need like to like work out in like more precise rehearsals.